Email educate me fast please. All rights reserved. Copyright 2016-2017. To get live educational seminar 24/7. Seminar. $10 record. $15 live human expert instructor. Email educate me fast please at gmail.com. Mention if you are interested in recorded or live seminar. PayPal accepted. Rate subject to change. Legal disclaimer. We strongly recommend that you consult with your own professionals, licensed realtor, attorney, engineer, financial advisors, etc. before making any major decision such as buying real estate. We can make changes to this website without providing notice to our readers. We are not liable for any errors, financial loss, or damages of any kind that may result from use of or reliance on the information herein and or on this website, live or recorded seminar. You must conduct your own due diligence and investigations rather than relying on any of the information in this website. Any person who acts upon, in reliance on, the information contained on this website does so entirely at his or her own risk. To the extent that any information on this website relates to a third-party website, IT is the sole responsibility of such third party. And this WEBSIT and SEMINAR creators assume no liability for such information. Please independently verify any information you get from this website or third party, as IT may be inaccurate. If you do not agree with this disclaimer, you must refrain from using this website, seminar. What is a mortgage? What is the cost for an average house in Queens, and why? What yearly income do I have to make in order for me to buy an average cost house in Queens, and why? What will the bank check before IT approves me for a mortgage? How much house can I comfortably afford? What are some rules of thumb of how much I can afford? How much money do I need to save to buy a house? Does my saving account have money for the down payment, the closing costs, and the hidden costs of buying a home? Have I saved for hidden costs of buying a house? How much money do I need to borrow from bank? In other words, what is my loan amount? In other words, what is my mortgage? What are the typical utility costs in New York City? What is the typical closing costs for a $500K house? Can you give me a breakdown? What is my credit score? How do mortgage lenders, banks, make money from me? How do realtors make money from me? What are the exact steps in home buying process in NYC? How long is the home buying process? Can you give me a sample time outline? Should I buy or rent? What are some reasons to not to buy a home? What caused the 2008 housing market to crash? Do I need a real estate agent to buy a house? How does my real estate agent make his or her commission? How much does he or she get? What is the difference among listing agent, a seller's agent, as buyer's agent, a broker? How does the commission get split among the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, the brokers? Is this the right time for me to buy a house? Or is there a housing bubble brewing? How can Google Maps help me in my house buying process? Besides Google Maps, what websites are important? NYC Map Portal, Zillow Sold Properties, Acris, Redfin, City Data, Realtor, MLSLI, NYC Department of Buildings. How do I use filters to screen for exactly what I am looking for when I am using an online home search engine like Realtor, Zillow, Trulia, MSLI? Should I use a mortgage broker? What is the difference between the asking price or the comparable comps? What is an appraisals? Why some middle class such as engineers and lawyers people cannot afford to buy a home now? What is the difference between a seller market and a buyer's market? Should I visit the block and neighborhood before I make an offer? What is earnest money? What is a good faith deposit? What does closing date mean? What does closing cost mean? What does a down payment mean? Why do I need to make a down payment? What are the 3 biggest expenses that people have trouble coming up with when buying their first home? What are some closing nightmares? How do I make an offer on a house? Can I email the seller's agent directly? Should I take money from my retirement account such as 401k? Where can I get my free credit report? How do I fix my credit report? Can loan underwriters make unreasonable demands on you to qualify you for a loan? Should I use a Roth to buy a house? Can a 10YEAR fixed rate mortgage save you money? What is FHA, VA mortgages? What are the risks of taking money from a 401k in buying a home? Where should I get my mortgage? What are fees for a mortgage? What is the latest mortgage rates based on my credit score? What is the difference between a mortgage qualification or pre-approval? What are pre-approval letter and a commitment letter? What is FICO? How important is my credit report in the home buying process? Can you give me an example for sample $200,000 mortgage example 3-year versus 1-5-year? How do I read a mortgage amortization table? Is there prepayment penalty or other hidden cost in my mortgage loan? What is the exact sequence and mortgage process? How do I reduce my closing costs? What is the lock rate? What is a good faith estimate? A truth in lending? Our closing costs are lower for cash buyers. Why? Why can I not go directly to the seller and make a deal without dealing with her or her agent? What are some hidden costs when buying a house? What are some up-and-coming Queens neighborhoods? How to pay your mortgage early? How do I find some hot neighborhoods to move into? Is it better to use a mortgage broker than a bank? How is my mortgage rate determined? Should a buyer with 20% down get a FHA mortgage? How should I shop for the best mortgage rate? Why do banks not pre-approve you until a property is in hand? What is the difference between a pre-approval and a loan commitment? Can you get a conditional approval that states your loan is guaranteed? What mistakes will raise your closing costs? How much should I put down payment? Why are mortgage fees slightly different from bank to bank? What are the steps in buying a home? How long will it take to buy my house? Can your real estate agent be a dual agent? What is her purpose of doing this? Is this a good idea? How to avoid the 10% penalty when I withdraw from a retirement? What are some ways to get your retirement cash early without penalty? What does it mean I am underwater mortgage? How does a low appraisal affect a home buyer, a home seller? What are contingencies, namely loan, inspection and appraisal? Why is an appraisal contingency clause written into the contract? What to do when home sellers play hardball and are not lowering their prices? Could the lender have final say? What are steps to make offer? Can I buy a home directly from owner and bypass the realtor? Can I get out a home purchase contract? What does a sample contract of sale for a home look like? Should young people believe in homeownership given the very high costs of our real estate? What are some hurdles for young people in buying a house? What is a real estate binder? Why is my agent making me sign it? What are questions about home inspections? Why is a home buyer's inspection required? Who should receive a copy of the home inspection report? The buyer PURCHACED. Can I get an inspection report to lower my offer price? What do I have to know about homeowners insurance? Should I check if my property has violations before I buy? Who is responsible for checking if my property has liens on it? Why is a real estate closing is delayed? What is a title or deed to a property? Is my title is considered to be clean? Can I lose my deposit for a new house when I make an offer? What are some reasons why underwriting holds up providing a mortgage commitment letter? Why is a certificate of occupancy so important? How much is left on the seller's mortgage? What is a seller's disclosure? How many taxes should I expect to pay to the government when I buy my house? How to pay off a mortgage when you sell your home? How can seller's bills can affect a new buyer? What is homeowner's title insurance policy different from regular title insurance policy? What does it mean to have a clear title? What is title insurance for? What is homeowner's title insurance and why do I need one? How to avoid title issues? What is deed fraud? My lender gave me a loan estimate, formerly called good faith estimate. Can you please explain each part of it to me? Before I get my loan, can a lender require me to get an asbestos contractor to come in and remove the asbestos and charge the seller of the house? What should I look for on a home inspection? Should I get the asbestos lead samples taken in the house? Should I take a drinking water sample tested? Should I look if the house in a flood zone? Should I look if the house has a septic tank? The well? Should I see if the property taxes are high? Should I check the travel time to work from my house? How do I find a contractor to fix my house? Do I need a permit to do work? How old is the boiler, hot water heater, electric panel? Is the heat in the house oil heat, gas heat, or electric? What is a coop? A condo. What are coop maintenance costs? Should I buy a foreclosure? Should I buy a short sale? Should I buy a HUD home? What are the pros and cons of buying a fixer-upper? Buying a home. How do I buy the right size home for my circumstance? What are the advantages for paying cash for a home rather than taking a mortgage? Should you pay for all cash for your next home? What is financial leverage? How to pay off your 30-year mortgage in 7 to 10 years. What are some real estate terms I should know? Why getting pre-approved for a mortgage is not a big deal these days. What is a assumable mortgage? What is the difference simple vs compound interest? What is foreclosure? What if I can't afford to pay my mortgage payment? Is home ownership losing its appeal? Should I pay off my mortgage or should I invest? Should I avoid a mortgage, remain debt-free, or is leveraged living smart strategy? Can I take money from my 401k plan without penalty? What are some reasons not to buy a short sale? What is an assignment of mortgage? What is the difference between a townhouse vs condo? What are common charges in a condo? What are the typical costs in New York City? What are maintenance charges in a coop or condo? What the monthly costs to buy a house? Who should receive a copy of the home inspection report the buyer purchased? How two unrelated people take ownership of a house? Do you owe tax from home transfer from your mom or dad? How to add my fiancé or mate to my house deed? Can a family member transfer a house to another family member? How to give property as gift with taxes in mind? How do you transfer ownership of a house to another person or spouse? I want to transfer my house title to my child. What the tax consequences of doing so? What is a tax lien? Do tax liens run with the land? What is lien position? Who gets to be first? Why second mortgage may slow the refinancing process with the bank. In New York State, what are the exact steps in the HOMEBUYING and closing process? What are steps to buying a house in New Jersey? What happens when the IRS puts a lien on a house? I have a federal tax lien and I am selling my house. Now what? How to avoid delays in closing when selling a property with a lien. Buying a property with known Fed tax liens. Now what? What are the different types of liens?